Well, that didn't take long. Jeff Tedford's return to Fresno is off to a flying start following a 3-0 conference record led by transfer quarterback Marcus McMarion and wide receiver Keyshawn Johnson. We'll find out just how Tedford's been able to work some early season magic and which players you should keep an eye on for the Bulldogs, as well as their opponent this week, San Diego State. As we go one-on-one with Fresno Bee writer Robert Kuwada on the OFN Meeting Room with Greg DePalma. All right, it's October 19, 2017. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning into the OFN Meeting Room as we talk Fresno State football with Robert Kuwada. Robert, coming from live from practice out in Fresno. Thanks for joining us today.
Sure, anytime.
Actually, you're probably, you tell me, are you still in California or Fresno, or are you, how does that go as far as with the trip and how it works out since the game is in San Diego State this week?
Yeah, they are practicing here today. They'll do a walkthrough and leave tomorrow, taking the charter down. And the way San Diego is, I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but you can't fly out of there at a certain hour. So it's actually a couple of night trip for Fresno State this weekend. Okay.
Well, big game. Boy, did you think that this, when you marked this game on the calendar before the season began, did you imagine that this could be as big of a game as it has already been this season?
Not as big as it is, but, going back to the spring, you can kind of see, and just looking at the conference, you knew they were going to be better. You didn't know how much better, but, there were hints along the way, but, maybe not of this magnitude. I don't think anyone would have expected them to be 3-0 in first place alone. I think everybody probably would have expected San Diego State to be right there with them. So
yeah, and we'll see what happens at the end of this week's game. That's for sure. But how do you? When you take a look at the early season with the Alabama-Washington games back to back, anybody could look at that schedule and be like, wow. Nobody had a tougher back-to-back non-conference schedule than Fresno State. And at least it looked like they held their own. It wasn't some trashing in either one of those games. And so that had to be encouraging. How important were those games? Because after that came the bye week, and then all of a sudden the conference schedule, which, as I mentioned, has been perfect so far.
Yeah, I think they were important just from the standpoint of these kids got a chance to go out there and compete, and they did it pretty well. So I think you have to come out of there with some degree of confidence and going into conference play after that bye week. The past couple of years they've started back-to-back road games. This year they got a chance to start at home and do it against Nevada, which has a first-year coach, installing new offense, new defense, and everything. Then they go to San Jose State. It's in the same situation, new coach, new offense, new defense. So there's a chance to, if they came out of those two games playing well, to get off to a good start in conference play. And obviously they have been able to do that.
When you take a look also at the fact that this team, the program has only won 4 games in 2 years combined. They've got 4 wins already. I mentioned the optimism. How's the excitement in, as far as the university is concerned with what's going on? Because I could imagine there was already, before the season began, a lot of excitement with Jeff Tedford coming back to his alma mater.
Well, you would hope so. I think, Fresno's kind of I'm going to say weird town, maybe unique town. You would think it would be a lot better just because of the history of the place, and they have, sold out their football stadium, almost every week for a long time. But lately it hasn't been quite that, and obviously the play on the field has had something to do with that. But they have yet to get to 30,000 for their 2 conference games. I think they have to be a little disappointed by that. I'm a little surprised by that, just being in this town. But you keep winning, I think it'll pick up. They have a lot going on here, so people have options, but there's nothing like a winning football team. So I think they'll have to come around.
Especially if this weekend's game turns out to be another win, which would be a huge win, because even though they've won the 3 conference games, I mean, New Mexico was definitely a step up from the previous 2, and not just beating a pretty good New Mexico team, but by beating them 38-0 was rather impressive. But now there's no question this is an even bigger step up in competition going on the road. I think everybody knows that follows the conference, or even nationally, of course. Dan Shonka has running back Rashad Penny as one of his top 2 senior running backs to come out in the draft this season. So besides Penny, what else is there to concern with regarding Fresno State and this Aztecs opponent?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, at San Diego State obviously has been the class of this conference the past couple of years, and they're very well versed in what they do both offensively and defensively. Their defense has given Fresno State a lot of problems the last couple of years, a 3-3-5. Fresno State got a chance to see it from Nevada a couple of weeks ago, but obviously not to the level that the Aztecs have played it the past couple of years. So going to be a lot on the offensive line on center, Aaron Mitchell, a lot on the quarterback, Marcus McMarion, to get everything set up and blocked and lined up and executing plays is the way they're going to need to. And like I said, Penny, one of the best backs in the nation, got to get a lot of hats on him and get him down on the ground.
How good do you think Penny could be? I mean, obviously, last year they had, Pumphrey was there with Penny, and being an East Coast guy and sometimes not being able to watch some of the games West Coast, you'd always notice, hey, wait a second. I mean, Pumphrey's having a big game, but who's this Penny kid? And
exactly.
And then all of a sudden Pumphrey's gone, and now Penny is a bigger player, so you would think that he might actually end up with an opportunity for a better, longer NFL career. You've got a chance to see both running backs. What's the difference?
Well, like you said, I mean, Penny is a bigger, much more physical player than Pumphrey was. And funny you should mention it, but the first time I saw both of them a couple of years ago, I thought I'd play Penny.
Yeah.
As good as Pumphrey was, I mean, he's just, he's a big, fast, physical back. And at this level, those guys are hard to find.
Now, what about any other players that you've been able to either watch? Again, 3 games so far in the conference, but any other players that you've either watched already or that you've been able to follow in this conference that maybe the average fan who's not used to watching a whole bunch of Mountain West Conference games should know about? Again, they know the Pennies, they know the Michael Gallups, or at least they've heard of them. Any other players that you think that people, and we'll get into Fresno State players in just a second, but anybody outside of Fresno State and those 2 guys that people should keep an eye on?
Well, San Jose State has a linebacker who's racked up a ton of tackles. Gente, he was a very impressive kid to watch. Outside of that, Nevada, San Jose State, New Mexico, he's the one who stands out to me right now as far as the teams Fresno State has played.
Yeah, now with Nevada, when you played Nevada, that game was in a part of a season where Nevada just didn't look like things were going well for them, and since then they played a lot better the last 2 weeks, almost beating Colorado State last week. Did that surprise you?
It did surprise me. Yeah, both those games. Their quarterback Ganji's really taken off since he was here.
Yeah,
he didn't get a chance to do a whole lot. I think Fresno State took them apart pretty good. Their 2 of their touchdowns, came in a 2-minute span in the second quarter. One of them off a turnover and one of them off set up by a big pass play. But other than that, they didn't get a whole lot done in that game. And you really didn't think that they were going to flip that switch as quickly and as well as they had last week.
Yeah, Jay Norville. Anytime you get those first-year head coaches, sometimes it takes a while. And of course, Tedford has a little bit more experience than Norville as a head coach. So, but maybe Norville's got that thing going right now. And Ganji's thrown for 706 yards in his last 2 games with 8 touchdowns and 1 pick. And another quarterback that is even hotter is your quarterback, Marcus McMarion, the Oregon State transfer. What happened when he took over? Because he takes over. They've won all 3 games. He's completed 65% of his passes for the season, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. what happened there? What transpired to take over, and how surprised are you that he's been able to be this successful in his first 3 starts?
Not really surprised. We'll start there. I mean, what happened was basically the first 1, 2, 3 games were competition between McMarion and Jason Virgil, and one of those two guys was going to win the job to take him through conference play. And McMarion is a little bit more dynamic than Jason is, athletically and also competitively, and I think that won out. McMarion got here like 10 days into fall camp or something like that, so he was a little behind in terms of the offense, but game planning wise, they've been able to put him in situations that he's comfortable, and it's made a significant difference for this offense.
I mean, you take a look at the receivers, and they're veteran receivers, which definitely help McMarion out. And the big one is Keyshawn Johnson. And I saw that. I was watching some of the game last week, and the one-handed catch in the back of the end zone was awesome. It's been really, I mean, he has upped his game this year, and everybody was excited about what they saw of him coming into the season, and now everybody is actually seeing that play out. How good of a player is he compared to some of the other receivers you've seen there, including, of course, most recently Davante Adams?
Wow. Well, Davante he's a different guy. I mean, he's it's everybody likes to compare those two guys because they came from the same high school and everything, and playing at the same college. But Keyshawn's not quite as physical as Davante is or was when he was here. But Keyshawn is still in development. He's still kind of a young player. He'll get bigger. He'll get stronger. That was really a point of emphasis for him over the off season, over the summer as well. I can remember, during their summer testing at the end of their strength and conditioning program, I was in a gym one night and saw him in there, and I thought, what are you doing? You guys are testing the bench tomorrow, and he's in there working out. And I thought, wow, it must be great to be young. And the next day he goes out, into that test, and he knocks out a personal record at 315 pounds. So, yeah, must be nice to be that young.
Oh, yeah. And he's only a junior.
He's only a junior. Like I said, he'll get bigger, faster, stronger, better in and out of his routes. I mean, he's going to be a fantastic player by the time he's done here. And, I mean, he works really hard at it. That catch you saw the other night, the 50-50 ball, is something that he's really worked hard on. And he made one almost as good as that one in the first game, I believe it was. Just same play. A little bit underthrown, had to come back over to defensive back to get to the ball, and did it. I mean, he's just been fantastic.
How important, besides everybody, you see a head coach, and there's a whole bunch of responsibilities as far as what he does to help a winning program. What specifically have you seen from Tedford, especially since he was a quarterback at Fresno? What has he been able to do, or what have you noticed to help the players specifically on offense, whether it's McMarion or, of course, even the receivers? Anything specific?
The one thing that stands out is just the attention to detail and the work, the quality of the work they put in practice. He's a guy who will touch every position group during the 90 minutes or 2 hours, however long they're going to be out here. He's very on top of things, very detail oriented. He'll stop a drill, and if it's not being done to his satisfaction, then the kids have really taken to that, and they see the results. So I think it's easier. I mean, this team is just practicing so much better than they have in the past couple of years. Part of that's growing up, and part of that's also, I think, the way they're being taught and the accountability factor for them.
And what about the other two receivers? They're both, Jameer Jordan is a junior, Damari Scott's a senior. Jordan has the big average of 24 yards per catch on only 9 receptions, 3 touchdowns. Scott has 26 receptions compared to 9 for Jordan. So how does that group complement each other, the three of them?
Very well. I mean, it's probably the best set in the Mountain West Conference. I mean, for me, Jameer got off to kind of a rough start. He struggled with some drops early in the year, but that New Mexico game, they left the outside receivers. I mean, they were manned up, and there's very few people who can stay with Jameer Jordan. The guy can just fly. He can run like very few others. You get him going with Keyshawn and Damari. I mean, it's going to be very tough on defenses. And Damari, he's a guy who had to sit out last year, come back for his fifth-year senior year, and I mean, he's got a chance to play next year somewhere as well. So, he's more of a physical receiver. He's fast. He can, exploit the matchups that they put him in. So, I mean, it's going to be really tough for defenses the rest of the way to figure out how to keep all three of them in check. I mean, now that Jordan's more involved.
And by the way, Aaron Mitchell, center Aaron Mitchell, is he the main cog on that line for the team?
Yes, he is. He's they've got pretty much the same group. The redshirt freshman guard has come in, Natani Muti, but for the most part, the other four are returning starters. But Aaron playing center. He's another guy who just had a fantastic summer. Much more into it, I guess is the best way to say that. I mean, he's become a guy, and in that summer, he's the guy who set personal records in all 6 tests that they do, and was voted team captain, and just from spring to summer has really taken off.
All right, and then on defense, Jeffrey Allison leads the team with 48 tackles, and defensive back Jaron Bryant has got 3 interceptions, including a pick 6. So are they 2 of the top defenders on this team? And who else besides Allison and Bryant should we be keeping an eye on this season?
That defense is really tightly wound together. I mean, you can say Allison, you can say Jaron, but the other safety, Juju Hughes. You got defensive linemen, Malik Forrester, Nate Madsen, Will linebacker George Helmuth. You got James Bailey. I mean, you've got the defensive ends. It's they play very well together as a group, is what they're doing right now.
All right, and overall, though, everything is looking really good as far as the field is concerned, and no reason to think that this is the momentum. I'm not sure whether it stops this week or not. Maybe if it's temporarily does, but no reason to think that this isn't going to wind up being a bowl season for Fresno State.
Yeah, at this point, I'd be very surprised if they didn't make it into a bowl game, and I wouldn't discount their chances at all on Saturday. I mean, San Diego State, I think Boise State gave some people an idea what could be done against that offense. So we'll just have to see what happens.
I like them, so I'll be rooting for him this week. And Robert, thanks a ton for joining us here on the show today, and we'll hopefully talk to you a little bit later on down the road, especially if this team can find their way into the Mountain West Conference Championship game, which would be pretty awesome.
That would be something. 1-11 of that, I think they'd take it.
Absolutely, Robert. I appreciate your time, and enjoy the game this week, and have a great season.
All right, thanks very much.
You got it. All right, that is Robert Kuwada. And again, Robert is the writer for Fresno Bee. He is on Twitter at rkuwada, Kuwada. Again, RKUWADA. I think I said that right. Okay, so that's Fresno State. Now, coming up a little bit later on, we are going to have two more interviews coming up back to back. One at 12:30 if you're listening live on PrimeSportsNetwork.com. One at 12:30 and then one at 1. So we're going to have Steve Irvine, color analyst for UAB football and writer for Blazers 247, and then at 1 o'clock, Owen Buchanan, Texas A&M football columnist at TexAgs.com. And then also, by the way, you want to stay tuned for one show and another interview later on. We've got our Week 7 NFL preview with Tony Mejia at 2:30. Of course, all those are Eastern time, so we'll take a look at all the games in the NFL this week with Tony. And then at 4 Eastern, Demario Richard, the running back for Arizona State, will be with us to talk about what's going on with Arizona State. And, of course, a very, very big win for Arizona State over Washington. So we'll speak to Richard. Richard is on Dan Shonka's list of running backs to keep an eye on for the 2018 NFL Draft. And if you want to know more about that list, you can order your NFL Draft preview on Ourlads.com. So go check that out. You could also check out the best NFL and college football depth charts in the business as well over at Ourlads.com. If you want to participate on the show, questions or comments, you can send your messages and follow us on Twitter at the same time, at PrimeSN. So that'll do it here for our inaugural interview, especially for this day. We've got a very busy day here on the Ourlads Football Network on the OFN Meeting Room. 2 more to go. Then our NFL preview show at 2:30, and then we're going to do another one of these meeting room interviews with Demario Richard at 4. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on the Ourlads Football Radio Network.